Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast, a podcast carefully designed to introduce a wide range of very talented and highly skilled professionals ready to share their knowledge and advice with you. Please welcome the host of I Got a Guy podcast, Michael Drelichars. Welcome to I Got a Guy podcast. I'm your host, Michael Drelichars. Thank you so much for being here. To our loyal subscribers, we really appreciate you downloading the episode every week and sharing this amongst your constituencies and on your social media feeds. We see growth every week, and we're thrilled about that. And we're seeing a lot of growth even internationally. So we know we're serving the greater public, and that's really what it's all about. So this show, I Got a Guy podcast, was really born out of the reading of a book called The Go-Giver. Bob Burg is the author, and it's all about how you grow a small business through giving, not getting. Many people think of referral networks as getting referrals. The reality is you grow a small business through giving referrals, and that's what the book is all about. So if you haven't read the book called The Go-Giver, I encourage you to do so. It's a great story, great book. And in that book, there are 5 laws of stratospheric success. And I like to, as you know, recap those with each of my episodes. And this week, the law I think that relates to our guest most directly is listed as the law of authenticity. And it's defined by the most valuable gift you have to give is yourself. The most valuable gift you have to give is yourself. And I think you're going to find when you get to know our guest that fits his personality perfectly. If you are new to I Got a Guy podcast, we welcome you as well. And if you want to catch any past episodes, I encourage you to go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. And you'll see a list of all of our episodes and be able to pick and choose which ones you want to listen to. Maybe you want to listen to them all. But each show will have a little synopsis of what the content is of the show. See which one meets your needs and can help you out. So do that at igotaguypodcast.com. So let's shift over here and talk to our guest this week. Our guest is none other than Joe Agnello. He is from Agnello and Rogers, attorneys at law. And Joe has a really interesting career as an attorney, and he's going to tell us all about his career and how he serves his clients, and hopefully can help you in some way. So, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So you've been an attorney for quite some time, and you got lots of experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your history and how you came into your current firm and how you got there?
So I've been an attorney for now 22 years, and I started out as a prosecutor in Cook County.
Okay.
Grew up in Chicago in the near west suburbs, and I thought I hit my dream job, even though the salary I knew was never going to be very high for a government employee. Nonetheless, I really, really loved the job. I loved being part of trying to make the community better that I grew up in, the community that I live in with my family. I still live in Cook County, the Chicago area, not in the city anymore, but in the northwest suburbs now. And I really enjoyed that job. I thought I was making a difference. And I still think we were making a difference. Mm-hmm. It was a wonderful job. But a couple of years in, and after having, I was married, we had our first kid, paying a mortgage, my student loans kicked in, and I realized it's really hard to stretch a government salary to cover all of that. So started looking at other things that I would be interested in.
Sure.
And real estate was one that piqued my interest. I was always interested in real estate, had no background whatsoever in real estate, but I started looking at doing real estate closings. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but it piqued my interest. And looking back on it, I think what I enjoyed the most is a real estate transaction is the biggest thing most people are going through at that point in their life.
Absolutely.
It is massive. I mean, you're talking about not just some piece of real estate that you're buying and selling, but somebody's home. It's a major, major impact on their family, on the future of their family, and all of that. And being a part of that I think is what originally drew me.
Sure.
So I started doing real estate transactions mid 2000s and left the state's attorney's office, opened up my own office as a solo practitioner. And I was a solo from 2005 to about 2021, I would say.
Wow.
And it it's tough being a solo and not having other attorneys around you to help bounce stuff off. So you got to be a good learner. You got to be a fast learner. And I learned as much as I could, as fast as I could. I had a lot of great mentors. I had some older attorneys I was able to lean on and grab some knowledge from. And I really saw what I was thinking I was getting being a prosecutor. I actually got doing real estate transactions.
Is that right?
Being involved in people's lives, seeing people's lives become improved.
Mm-hmm.
And, but this time nobody was going to jail. There was no risk of it. There was no tickets. Generally everybody was happy. The seller was happy. The buyer was happy.
Sure.
Everyone was happy. And it really turned out to be a fantastic area of the law, and I still do a lot of real estate, and I really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was doing real estate, I started seeing what happens when somebody is deceased and that house has got to be sold.
Sure.
So the probate process is so burdensome
Mm-hmm.
that I started seeing the difference between when somebody had a trust and somebody didn't have a trust. And so I started learning. I said, I got to learn this now too, because there is no reason why everybody who owns real estate should not have a trust.
Okay.
And so I started learning that. Now that's one of the biggest areas of my practice.
Yeah.
I would say those two areas, real estate and estate planning, are probably the two biggest areas of my practice.
Sure. They go hand in hand so well. I mean, once you have this, first of all, you as a home buyer, you're making a large commitment, large financial commitment, but a long-term commitment as well. Typically 30-year mortgage, you're in it for the long haul. And so many things in your life can change over that span of time. So you need to protect yourself. And then, so you find that, going from a real estate transaction, you can then talk to your clients about protecting this investment and setting up a trust and estate planning.
Absolutely. I tell every single one of my clients, especially on the as they're purchasing, that this is the next thing that we have to talk about. And it's not, when I first started doing it, I thought, okay, am I just trying to upsell them onto another product? Not at all. I mean, of course, yes, I'm benefiting because it's another product that I offer, another service that I offer. But it is so important. It is so devastating to people. Let me tell you a quick story. I had a client that was maybe late 20s, early 30s, buying his first home, newly married, no kids yet. We at the closing, we were talking about doing an estate plan. We were talking about a trust, and an estate plan is a trust is the primary document, but you have some other very important documents involved. You have what we call pour over wills. It's a certain type of will that works with a trust, and you have powers of attorney, powers of attorney for property, powers of attorney for healthcare, for while you're alive but incapacitated. You don't have the legal capacity to make financial decisions or to even make health decisions. And so these are all very important things. And we were sitting there at the table talking about all of that. Several months later, we talked again a little bit. I started sending him some information about how we can start getting it started and putting together their estate plan. It kind of went on the back burner for them. Next thing I know, several months later, this is maybe a year to 2 years after they purchased that home, I get a call that the husband had a massive stroke. He was alive, but he wasn't coming out of it. And he ended up living a couple of years on machines. He had zero legal capacity whatsoever and barely any communication ability. And his wife, he was the breadwinner in the family. His wife couldn't afford the house that they purchased, but then she couldn't sell the house because her husband, who was on title with her, was completely incapacitated, had no ability to sign a deed. It was a massive problem. It became a very expensive problem for her. And eventually, thousands of dollars down the road, after doing a guardianship, and which is a probate basically for a living person, um, being able to get control so she could sign his name, would have been fixed with a very simple
Mm.
estate plan. Didn't need to be anything elaborate. But these are the reasons why I push it. We don't know when that something's going to happen.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah, that is a tragic situation that it's really unfortunate. But hopefully, from that experience, you share that experience with other clients and maybe avoid that for somebody else.
That's right.
I mean,
And
that's
that's exactly what I tried to do.
yeah, yeah. So that's and it's interesting because some people will like as you mentioned before about whether or not you're upselling another product to a client. The reality is uh, that really is so far down the path. The benefits realized by setting up an estate plan and having all your ducks in a row is really the right thing for your client. It is
It's the right
so
thing.
it is because we just don't know what's in store for us down the road. This is really critical, and I think you almost do your client a disservice if you don't promote that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm convinced of that at this point. When I first started learning it, um, I, I would say that I wasn't 100% convinced that things couldn't work out if you didn't have a trust. I've seen enough situations now over the past 20 some years that 100% it's essential.
Yeah.
Multiple times I've seen where we had to probate an estate, sometimes between spouses, because the wife didn't realize that she wasn't on title as a joint tenant
Mm,
with her husband.
mm.
Husband passed. Well, they were what's called tenants in common, which means ownership didn't pass to the other spouse.
Oh
It
my.
remained in the deceased spouse's estate. And they never would have thought that. Now, that was an error that happened. And I've seen it multiple ways. I've seen it as an error at the closing where it should have been, they should have taken title that certain way. And I've also seen it where they started changing things. I have one where they put the kids on title, which is an old fashioned way of estate planning. I'm going to put my kids on title, and then when I pass, it's going to go to them anyway. Massive problems with that.
Sure.
I've seen them do that where they do it incorrectly. Now everyone's on there as a tenant in common, so ownership is not passing, and now there's probates for everybody
Oh my.
when they pass away. By the way, you would never want to put your kids on title. If your kid gets into some sort of a lawsuit through a car accident, business, profession, whatever it is, now your house is at jeopardy in
Mm.
that lawsuit. You would never want to do that.
Never thought about
Uh,
that. Yeah, that's an interesting wrinkle that I never thought about.
People don't think about that when they're in the middle of doing it.
Right. Right. Well, that's fascinating. Huh. Well, it's some people think about having to put the a will and powers of attorney and a trust in place. Maybe when you have children or when you get further into your life. But it sounds like the right thing to do is to get that set up. The earlier the better, and then I would imagine you then tweak it as you go, as your life evolves, as you grow your family, have a child or adopt a child, or uh, buy additional real estate, etc. That document then can evolve with the family, right? So you need to get it set up to
That's right.
start, and then you just kind of you kind of enhance it and grow with it along the way.
Exactly. And the way that we usually set them up, they're usually all encompassing. They try to cover future. I mean, the reasonably conceivable things that could happen. Future born kids or adopted. Special needs, we include special needs provisions if one of your kids becomes special needs, whether
Hmm.
disease or accident or the way that they were born,
Sure.
whatever the case is. We try to create a document that's going to cover the um, unknown twists of life. However, there are times that people need to change those. Divorce, you need to get a new plan done. Your kids are now older, that they're no longer minors, they're adults in their 30s, and you want them to be the ones in charge after you're no longer able to be in charge of your affairs yourself. So there are points in time that they do need to be updated, but we try to create something that doesn't need to be updated regularly. I have a lot of clients that come and say, well, I haven't looked at my trust in a few years. Well, those are good things to do, because that's a time to have a discussion about have life changes
Right.
happen. And now that's how we flush those things out. Maybe the document doesn't need to be changed,
Sure.
but uh, those are times that we get to relook at it and see, hey, are things going along the way that they were when you originally set this up? And are your intentions different now? Do you want to give to certain places? You talked about giving. Uh, Giving is such an important thing. It's an
Hmm.
important thing in my practice, in my networking, and in life in general. And
Hmm.
I see some of the happiest, most successful people I've dealt with are people that do give. And your estate plan is a time to do that. You're giving to your family, and you're giving to other charities and ministries and churches or organizations that are important to you, and
Sure.
it's a way to leave your mark on the world.
Sure. So when you meet with your clients, you kind of have this very broad conversation, I would imagine, talking about what's important in your life. Is it a church? Is it in my case, my children are adopted, so we in our
Mhm.
estate plan we have a provision for our adoption agency. Because
Right.
they they were such an they were so impactful in us forming a family that we have contemplated and drafted some language to thank them for that in our estate plan.
Exactly. The
Right.
things that have impacted your life, well, you want to give an impact back so that they can continue being an impact in other people's lives.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's really important. So you recommend somebody would review this, review their estate plan every, what, 5, 6, 8 years?
Yeah, I mean, no set standard. I
Hmm.
don't think it's something that's every year, but especially if uh, as things are changing, your kids are older now, and they're becoming adults, or your kids are even just getting ready for college. I
Sure.
mean, one of the things that we do, I'm not a financial advisor, but I work with a lot of financial advisors. We like to get the financial advisors involved. My partner is an accountant. We like to get the accounting perspective involved.
Mm.
We like to look at the whole plan to see, okay, not just when you die, but while you're alive, how is this plan fitting with your overall picture
Right.
of how you're operating? And I'll tell you, we have discovered so many things that people weren't even thinking about as their kids were getting older to go into college, or even really young trying to plan for college.
Sure.
College is expensive. This is a major life
No doubt.
operation, and not that college is even for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of different things for people to do when they grow up, but that is one thing that needs to be, I think, part of the whole plan. And we try to bring in the other experts too, the accountants, the financial
Sure.
advisors, us doing the legal plan, and and try to set people in a direction that they're going to be um, taking care of their family if one of them were to have something tragic happen to them, or different twists in life.
Right.
We try to make sure their plan is right.
Well, um, no one likes surprises in
Right.
when something like this, when something in life happens. Surprises are not necessarily a good thing.
Right.
So to plan for it and to have a have the forethought to kind of think through the broader picture is really well advised. And I think that's
Yeah.
smart. I think it's really smart. Joe, we're going to take a break here for a second and hear from our sponsor. But I want to make sure you share your contact information with our listeners. So, what's the best way if somebody either wants to purchase some real estate? The real estate market I think is going to heat up again here coming up
Oh,
now
I
in
think so.
24. People may be sitting on the sidelines waiting for their interest rates to come down, but they need to have a good attorney to represent them, or they just simply need to review their estate plan. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
So we have two good ways. One of them is my phone number, which is 630-452-3847, or my website. And then they can learn a little bit more about our firm. It's Agnello, Agnello, Rogers, ROGERS.com. AgnelloRogers.com.
Okay, great. I will put that information on the screen for our YouTube and Rumble viewers, and I'm also going to put that in the notes so that our listeners can find that information as well and be able to reach out to you. And to our listeners, as I tell you every week, when you do reach out to Joe to inquire about his services, make sure you tell him that you heard about him here on I Got a Guy podcast. It's a great way for us to connect the dots and know how well our broadcast is helping everybody. So make sure you tell them that. So let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in a minute or so, and we will continue talking with Joe Agnello from Agnello Rogers, Attorneys at Law. Be right back. We certainly hope you're enjoying this week's episode, and we'll return to this week's guest in just a moment. But now a message from our sponsor, Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. If you own a fleet of vehicles, even if it's just 2 or 3 vehicles, GPS tracking is an important component for every vehicle. Here are the 5 top reasons companies invest in GPS tracking: driver safety, vehicle location, driver behavior, proof of service, and monitoring vehicle maintenance. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions can enhance your growth and profit through the use of GPS tracking technology. Reach out to Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions at www.precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call 847-865-6008. That's 847-865-6008. Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. GPS tracking made simple. Now, let's get back to the show. Okay, we are back. Thank you for sticking with us. I am Michael Drelichars, host of I Got a Guy podcast. We really appreciate you listening and sticking with us today. Our guest today is Joe Agnello from Agnello and Rogers, Attorneys at Law. We've been talking with Joe here about real estate law and how closely estate planning is tied in with real estate. And a lot of people will put an umbrella of family law around those topics, correct? So kind of.
Yeah, I think so. Family law sometimes refers to divorces and custody and child support and all of that, but really this is family law because most of our clients we're dealing with families. We're dealing with grandparents, kids, grandkids. I mean, we're dealing with the things that affect that entire family, and many
And really
times
helping families, create a legacy.
that's right.
Real estate is a
Exactly right.
transaction, and
Right.
and so for some people that's a once in a lifetime transaction. They buy their home and they stay there for a long time,
Right.
and maybe not once in a lifetime, but not frequent. But
Mhm.
having an estate plan helps kind of map out the legacy for that family and making sure that things are protected and things are in lined up for changes that occur. So it's really helpful that you're able to do that. I wanted to ask a couple questions. People often think, well, if I have a house, I need to have a will. And I know you mentioned the will is a part of the trust, but the will doesn't go far enough. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. And that's a great thing to bring up. Wills have to go to probate court. Whether you have a will or don't have a will, it has to go to probate court, where a judge is going to make a decision. Your assets are going to be tied up from anywhere from 7 or 8 months to a couple of years. It all depends. Things become public record. There's opportunities for more people to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's appropriate. Every now and then I see a scenario that I feel we really do need to go to probate court. Probate
Really?
has mechanism for terminating the rights of creditors. Excuse me. So sometimes that's a very important thing. It really depends upon the situation. But well over 90%, probably 99% of the time, probate court is not appropriate. And we could save the family thousands of dollars um, by just having an estate plan. And so I'll give you a quick example of that. When I started seeing people pass away with a trust versus not having a trust, I saw this massive difference. I'm sorry, well, yes, without a trust. Without a trust, we're having to go into probate court, either with the will or without the will. And all this time and expense was being taken up. And I'll explain what I mean by that. Whereas with a trust, we were able to kids were able to access their parents' home immediately, put it on the market, sell it, and not having it sit around. Without having that ability, going into probate court, now we have to wait for those letters of office issued from the court, which gives the executor the right to then sell the house. Meanwhile, we have a vacant house sitting there that's prone to squatters, damage that nobody's going to know about. What if a pipe burst that nobody's there to catch for days, weeks? You have insurance, which insurance does not like vacant homes. So sometimes that gets terminated early, or a very expensive plan has to be obtained. You have the utilities. You got to keep the utilities running, particularly in the Chicago area where you have, now negative degree weather this week. You're going to have burst pipes everywhere.
Sure.
So you have to keep your utilities going.
Taxes are
You
expensive.
have to keep heating that house. These are all expenses that are not necessary. Whereas if it was in a trust, everything could be accessed immediately. You don't have a vacant home sitting there as a liability that could be much more costly as time goes on. You can actually resolve that asset immediately.
Yeah. Well, that's great, and that's really sage advice for our listeners, because I think a lot of people are confused about the two, frankly, and
They are.
I've talked to even family members who are confused, and I try to help them get on board with the right concept, and it's just really good advice to heed that and just be well protected. You got to pay for a trust up front, but the return on that investment is significant. Should something happen that you can't anticipate, and sometimes you can't unring the bell. In the example that you
Right.
talked about earlier with the family who husband had a massive stroke. I mean, that is, once that happens, it's done.
It's done.
So okay.
Once you can no longer sign these legal documents, well, you can no longer sign anything. I mean, it's either signing it while you have your capacity and you can think out what you want done. This is also the opportunity for you to, I tell a lot of my clients, you've got a lot of stuff you want to say to your family, and hopefully it's not going to be negative stuff. Hopefully it's positive
Right.
stuff. This is your opportunity. They're going to be paying attention at your wake, after you pass. They're going to be paying attention. They're going to be grieving, and this is a time for you to share your love with them one more time and get some things on paper that you want them to know, and let them know that you've just taken care of things for them financially in an organization that is going to be so much easier on them when you go. And the families that don't do that, I got to tell you, it's very draining on the family members. One, you're in the hospital and the doctors ask about whether we terminate life support or not. I have seen families in so much anguish over that, not knowing what their loved one wanted. Well, this is your opportunity to get a document together, a healthcare power of attorney, where you're going to give them what you want. And they're not going to have to worry about it when that time comes.
There's another piece there that we haven't touched on, and that is, for the surviving family members, if there is no trust and therefore a roadmap of what should happen, invariably there's a good chance that the surviving family members may not agree with what should happen. And now
That's right.
you have contention within siblings, for example, or whoever the surviving family members might be, and that can be devastating to the family. And nobody
Absolutely.
wants that. If nobody wants the family to fight after the fact, and but without a clear direction, you potentially open yourself up to a pretty ugly situation.
Absolutely. That's such a great point. I'm glad you brought it up. Uh, we have seen the death of a family member wreak havoc on the family, not because, I mean, everyone's grieving, but people grieve differently.
Absolutely.
And sometimes, and this is the unfortunate thing with siblings, we all have things against our siblings. We all have memories like, why did he always get away with that? I remember when she took this from me when I was 4. When your parents die, the last of your parents typically, that stuff starts to come
Right.
up. And I have seen 60-year-olds argue over stuff that happened when they were little
Right.
kids. When you have a strong plan about what's going to happen to the stuff, all of that background, those background memories, they don't have a chance to rise up. It's when there's no plan that those things then have a chance to rise up, because then there's this frustration of, well, how come dad's investment plan or bank accounts are not being distributed timely? Well, you know what? That's how you were when we were 4. And all those things start to come out and they come up to the surface and it gets
Yeah.
explosive. And that's not what we want. We want your family to have some peace.
Well, you're exactly right. And the reality is that can not only get very ugly, but it can have life lasting impact on the remaining family members.
That's
I've
right.
heard of families that when the second parent passes, siblings, they kind of go their own direction because of these things, and it's really unfortunate
That's
because
right.
as a parent yourself, Joe, and I'm a parent myself. A parent never wants that. Yeah, every parent wants
Right.
their kids to get
Exactly.
along wonderfully after they're gone and live harmoniously and have a great life together. And it's really unfortunate when poor planning leads to a destruction of a family unit down the road.
That's right.
And
You wouldn't think that that would happen, but it
I'm sure it does.
does,
Yeah,
because it gives that the chaos of dealing with the affairs of a loved one after they pass opens up the door for all the other chaos, you know, through your life, which we all have it. We all have uh, disagreements that have happened over the years with our
sure.
siblings and
And that's
things like
life. That's
that,
being a
and
human
things
being.
may,
That's how
that's
it
life.
is.
Exactly.
But it's
Exactly.
how you handle that in the time of a stressful situation. And the passing
Right.
of a family member is a very stressful situation. And if things are
Very.
documented and outlined and you got your arms around it, there's a better chance that you can survive as a family unit together.
That's right. It streamlines it, makes it easier. There's less stress, less opportunity for past events to come up, and people just want to um, more come together and cooperate through the
Right, right.
process. At least that's how
That's
we've seen
right.
it.
So the bottom line. Let me boil this down to the bottom line here. If you uh, as an adult, if you have any real estate, you live in your home, and you don't have an estate plan in place, you really need to heed Joe's advice here and establish a foundation. Get started with a conversation with Joe to make sure that you have your estate plan in place where you have a trust with your will, pour over will, and your powers of attorney, and all your desires are documented legally and officially, and it will save a lot of stress and frankly a lot of money down the road.
That's right. Probate is significantly more expensive than putting together an estate plan. And it really, and everybody, whether you have real estate or not, there's a state and estate plan for everybody. It looks a little bit different depending on what you own. So we look at, well, how do we get the stuff that you own to your loved ones? And so it meanders a little bit, but where I draw the threshold for whether you need a trust or not, if you own real estate, absolutely you need a trust. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You need a trust if you own real estate.
If you own your primary home, one piece of real estate, you're not talking about investment real estate. You're talking about your primary home.
Right. As soon as you own a home, and people have, I hear the comment, "Well, I have a mortgage on my own. I don't own it yet." Oh no, you own it. Your lender has a lien against it. That's called a mortgage, but you are the one on the deed. You own it.
Right. Very, very true. Very true. Well, that's great advice, Joe. I really appreciate you doing that. And I hope to our listeners, frankly, I hope you all have an estate plan in place. If you don't, I really encourage you to reach out to Joe and get the conversation started. Just to avoid the shock and awe of, oh, shucks, I didn't do this before and now it's too late. That's
right.
You just want to avoid that. So real estate, here in the Chicago inland area, has been a little soft, and the rates gone up, and there's just a low supply of real estate. You anticipating that changing much coming up here in 2024, Joe?
I do. People have been really sitting on the sidelines for the past year as rates have been going up. We're seeing some decreases in rates right now. And I am seeing people move. And a lot of people haven't wanted to move because they have these low rates, right? But many people are in a situation where they really do need to. Either they need to downsize, or they were really needing to move closer to work or closer to grandkids or whatever the case is. And they were just kind of hanging on. Well, the rates do seem to be going down just enough to start allowing that to happen. And even now in January, where nobody's going to want to move in below zero weather, but I'm seeing some contracts coming in right now. So that shows that there is movement in the market. And I don't think, real estate, we've gone through a lot of cycles. I was here in 2008 when things looked really, really tough, and I continued doing real estate during that and after. It comes in cycles. It never goes away. It's one thing we can't manufacture new of is real estate.
Right. Yeah, people need a place to live. Is the bottom line.
That's right.
Whether you're renting an apartment, somebody has to own that apartment. So there's a real estate transaction there.
Exactly.
I know that the builders are trying to build it where they can and as fast as they can. And there's a lot of variables that are factored into it. But I also agree that I think 2024 is going to be a stronger year for real estate transactions. So if you are thinking of either adding a home to your portfolio, whether it be an income property or a lake home or what have you, it's really important to have an attorney review that contract and make sure that you are representing yourself and you have the right details in place so that there are no surprises. And I think that's really important. So certainly reach out to Joe for that.
I should add on that, we represent a lot of investors. I mean, I would say the majority of my clients are homeowners, but we represent a lot of investors, and we are very familiar with the business organizations that need to be in place for those types of investments, and also how that all fits in with your estate plan. It's all full circle.
Yeah.
So we're very experienced.
That's great. Yeah, that is where, especially having 20 plus years of experience really pays dividends. So you've seen a lot. You've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, I'm sure. So,
that's right.
So for a new homeowner, and there's a lot of millennials that are trying to jump into the market as well, with their first home purchase.
We've seen a lot more of it.
Yeah,
right
now. And that's a daunting task for anybody. And I remember back when I bought my first home, we knew so much less than we didn't know. And having experienced a realtor, but experienced attorney behind you to kind of guide you and protect us is really, really critical. So I think your experience pays dividends, and I'd be thrilled for any of our listeners to reach out to you to inquire about helping them with a real estate transaction, whether it be their first home or their 10th or 12th, 20th home. So thank you for being willing to do that for our listeners, Joe.
Yes. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. And I appreciated being
Great.
here.
So share for us, for our listeners again, the best way to reach out to you to inquire and get started with a conversation.
So 2 great ways. You could either give us a call at 630-452-3847, or you could go to our website and learn a little bit more about myself, my partner Susan, and about our firm. And that's AgnelloRogers.com. That's AGN as in Nicholas, ELLOROGERS.com.
Great. And your phone number one more time, Joe?
630-452-3847.
Thank you. I put that on the screen and put that in our show notes so everyone can reach out to you that way. And again, tell them that you heard about them here on I Got a Guy podcast. So, Joe, any parting comments as we wrap the show up today?
Yeah. So I think a lot of people don't like thinking about estate plans because it's obviously thinking about their own death. But one thing that we have 100% certainty of, we are all going to die. And that's a statistic that is not changing. It is 100% certain. It is something that we have to deal with. And I think as we start talking about it, which I don't charge for these initial consultations, so people can call me and not worry about getting a bill. We could talk and see if this is going to be a good fit for them. And if not, it's okay. And if it is, we're going to be able to help them. And we'll have those conversations with people that really don't like talking about this. But as we go through it, they see how it just makes sense. And it's so much easier to talk, to work out. And as you're talking through it, it's a lot easier.
Right. Okay. Well, that's really good advice. Thank you for sharing that, and I encourage our listeners to heed your advice and start the conversation. No time like the present to get started.
Mike. That's right.
Great. Well, thank you again, Joe. And to our listeners, just as a final recap, just so you know that, while I Got a Guy podcast is a passion of mine and I really enjoy doing this, my day job is I own Precise Fleet Tracking Solutions. We are a GPS tracking company, and we provide GPS tracking solutions to businesses that own commercial vehicles. So we help these business owners enhance their growth and profit through the use of our GPS tracking technology. There's been a lot of issues lately with theft of assets, vehicles, and plows and bobcats, backhoes, etc. If you happen to own any of these assets and you want to protect them, we have a solution to help. So if you have any interest, I encourage you to reach out to us at precisefleettracking.com. That's precisefleettracking.com. Or call us at 847-865-6008. That's 847-865-6008 for more information, and we can get the conversation started. So again, thank you again for listening this week. I always appreciate that, and send your comments along. If you have any interest in being a guest on the show, certainly reach out to us at igotaguypodcast.com. So, Joe, again, thank you for being with us. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. And we hope you have a great week. And we'll talk to you all next week. Take care.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Take care. Thank you for listening to I Got a Guy podcast. For past podcasts and more information, go to igotaguypodcast.com. That's igotaguypodcast.com. Please share this podcast on your social media feeds and tune in again next week to I Got a Guy podcast.